In this video, Mehdi Hasan completely destroys this guy John. He's a major general. He was a major general, retired now for the Israeli army. Let's take a look at how he is destroying him.
I don't know how I can respond. So much gaslighting from the very beginning. John has been on the ground in Gaza, as an embed. I love it when John and Douglas Murray and these people say, oh, we've been on the ground in Gaza. Yeah, as guests of the Israeli military that's doing the killing, starving and maiming. And you've come back and done exactly what they wanted to do. You've done their propaganda for them. Journalists have not been allowed freely into Gaza. That's why every major media organization on planet Earth has said to the Israeli government, you must allow journalists in. The Palestinian journalists who are there have been killed in record numbers. Of course, Piers, you're right. They want to hide what they're doing. That's why they're killing the journalists there and blocking the journalists from coming in. This idea that he's been on the ground. Yeah, I did interview a doctor, a British plastic surgeon, Dr. Tom Patoka. And by the way, he wasn't in the European hospital because the hospital got bombed by Israel. So he was in another hospital. And he talked to me about how he has to treat patients who have maggots in their wounds. He has to treat patients without limbs. He has to treat children. I've interviewed multiple doctors on the ground in Gaza, actually in Gaza, not hanging around with Israeli military. And they've all said the same thing. American doctors, British doctors, Canadian doctors. They've all talked about how many kids they saw with sniper bullets to the head and chest. Israel does intentionally kill civilians. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant were indicted at the International Criminal Court for precisely those charges, for willful killing of Palestinians, for murder and persecution. That's why they've been indicted. That's why every human rights group in the world says war crimes are being committed. They've killed people holding white flags. We've seen it with our own eyes. They've bombed buildings without warning with families inside, like the Al-Dos family that I often cite in October 2023. They've dropped 2,000-pound bombs on refugee camps full of hundreds of people. They have killed 7 aid workers in a clearly marked World Central Kitchen aid convoy. They've bombed World Food Programme convoys, leading to Cindy McCain, the wife of the most pro-Israeli senator of my lifetime, to come out and condemn Israel for attacking aid workers. John wants you to ignore Cindy McCain and British and American doctors and human rights groups and your own lying eyes watching people with white flags being gunned down. He wants you to believe him and his Israeli military minders.
OK, Mehdi, before we go back to John to respond to that, Asim Yusuf being asked this on trigonometry last week, I think it was, and he struggled to answer. How should Israel have responded to a terrorist attack, which, just to remind viewers, over 1,200 people were murdered, nearly 7,000 more were wounded, over 250 people, including babies and Holocaust survivors, were kidnapped and taken hostage, and many of those have died. How should Israel have responded to the biggest attack on its people and its land since its existence?
So there's no easy answer to that question, Piers, and you might not like the answer I give you, which is that Israel should have responded by abiding by international law, by sticking with the rules of armed conflict, by targeting only the people they believe carried out the crime. They should have used an international coalition of countries that was fully behind them. The majority of the world was behind Israel after the tragedy of October the 7th. And by the way, I have a longer memory than maybe some people in this country. After 9/11, I got asked the same question. Well, what should we do if we don't bomb Afghanistan? What should we do if we don't go after bin Laden, etc.? How did that work out? 23 years later, your pal Donald Trump, Piers, is taking pictures with the former leader of Al-Qaeda, who's still on a globally designated terrorist wanted list, right? That's where we came. The war on terror was a complete failure. And some of us who saw that, and by the way, Joe Biden even said this in one of his more coherent moments. He said Israel should learn from our lessons. Israel did not learn from the US lessons. And actually, even if you forget about all the innocent Palestinians they killed, even if you don't give a shit about the people of Gaza, even if you only care about the people of Israel, Israel's not any safer today. Israel is not winning this war. John said on Times Radio a year ago, I went back and checked, March of last year, John said, we're very close to winning. Israel's close to victory. Over a year later, they're not close to victory. They're just starving children and denying baby formula. And the former Israeli general who ran the Gaza division said a few months ago, Hamas is winning this war. So they've not made themselves any more secure. I don't have some perfect solution for what they should have done on October 7th. But I do think they shouldn't have killed 50 to 100,000 people, and they should have made themselves less secure. And by the way, the Prime Minister should have resigned because he's the one who let it happen on his watch.
Well, I certainly agree with that.
There is no good outcome from this genocide in Gaza. Absolutely nothing. It is always horrendous. It is always very repugnant that this happens to any people, let alone people who are totally defenseless in Gaza. However, we still have to spin some positive narrative here. Something is happening in the States. We have seen how Joharan Mamdani, running for New York mayor, is becoming more and more popular, and he is winning Looks like he's going to be the next mayor of New York. And he ran on this slogan that this genocide committed by Israel must be stopped and Palestine must be free. People in the United States at the same time, they are waking up. More and more people, especially the younger generation, are waking up to this reality that their government is being blackmailed by the Zionists. All of these things are happening. Mamdani running on an anti-Israel campaign and with that slogan. Young generation waking up. The Arabs are waking up. Slowly but surely, Iran knows how to defend itself and they are better prepared for future war with Israel. All of these things are happening because of this genocide. Because Netanyahu did not care for the life of the Palestinian children.
And I do think there'll be a day of reckoning for Netanyahu. The problem is, John, that Netanyahu is facing corruption charges in a trial, which may well lead to his imprisonment if he's convicted.
University say Gaza is a genocide. John's not an expert on targeting terrorists. The guy who led the attack on ISIS, the American Master Sergeant Wes Bryant, has said John doesn't know what he's talking about. So let's not play this credentials game because John will lose, just like Douglas did on the Rogan show. Let's talk about substance. John said a year ago, we're close to winning. He talked about not being allowed into Rafah. Rafah has been destroyed. Have you looked at any pictures recently? It's flattened. You don't need to go there with the IDF to see that they flattened Rafah. They flattened most of Gaza, and they still have not won, quote unquote. It's absurd to say that Israel was held back. Is this the new stab in the back? This is the new bullshit defense. The former Israeli ambassador to the United States said recently, thank God Joe Biden was president while this was going on. He gave us everything we wanted. He never asked us to stop. He never asked for a ceasefire. America gave Israel everything it wanted, and they went ahead and decided to, you talk about killing Hamas commanders. They dropped two 2,000-pound bombs on October the 31st, 2023, on the Jabalia refugee camp, killing over 100 people to kill one guy, Ibrahim Biari, who wasn't even there, a Hamas commander. They killed over 100 people with two 2,000-pound bombs, which incinerate everyone within 100 square feet and damage everyone within 1,000 square feet. That is not targeted warfare. That is not proportionate. That is not legal. And we've seen that play out now over 20 months. And as you said at the start of the show, as I said, the dam is breaking. The Spanish Prime Minister has said Israel is a genocidal state. The Brits, the French, the Canadians that have backed everything Israel done. Britain continues to arm Israel and saying this is intolerable. Donald Trump, as you've said, Piers, wants this done, wants this over, isn't a fan of Netanyahu. Not that I have any trust in Trump to do any of the right thing. And I think the reality is, look, everyone can see with their own eyes, there's no justification ever for starving people. Since March the 2nd, to not allow baby formula and diapers in, only a sociopath would support that. And John's very smart, he's very eloquent, he comes on here, talks with stats, cites law. Back in Israel, the Israeli politicians and the Israeli journalists are saying openly genocidal things. They are saying everyone in Gaza is our enemy. They are saying we're going to get rid of everyone from Gaza. They are saying Gazan babies are not innocent. That's what they say on Israeli television, if anyone bothers to watch.
Yeah, and actually, John, there was a piece in the Jewish...
Also, what about Netanyahu calling the people of Gaza, in fact, any non-Israeli as Amalek, and is calling for open killing of all of the people who are not Israeli and who are a threat to his entity, the Zionist entity. What about that? What about Smotrich, Ben-Gvir calling for genocide every single day? You defend all of these ministers' rhetoric, their statements. You are actually making yourself look like 100% moronic, stupid, a fool, who is absolutely delusional and doesn't know what he's talking about. And you should never come to the defense of any of these monsters because they don't want to be defended. Rather, they want you to tell the whole world what they think. Their warning, their threats of genocide, the one they're already continuing in, they want that to be amplified, not to be defended. And John Spencer, this guy right here, by trying to defend Israelis' position, their action in Gaza, is actually making himself look 100% a moron. This is exactly what Mehdi Hasan is saying. John, don't try to put up a show.
Involve a genocide, right? That's been my consistent position from the beginning. Don't kill civilians. Don't intentionally harm civilians. When the former head of the Israeli military, the former Israeli defense minister, not some lefty, not some anti-Semite, Moshe Yaalon says last week, we're doing ethnic cleansing. We're sending our soldiers to commit war crimes. We're losing touch with our Jewish values. That's what Moshe Yaalon, a hawk, the former head of the Israeli military, said last week. There's a reason he's saying that, and there's a reason John Spencer doesn't want to engage with that, because Israeli generals are saying it themselves. We've turned killing kids into a hobby. The world can see. I thought we're not interrupting, John. The world can see what Israel is doing. Israeli generals can see. And by the way, one last point, please don't go and invoke Yemen to score your points. I think I've spoken and written more about Yemen than you ever have. People like you only ever come along and cite Yemen and Sudan to defend Israel. You don't actually give a shit about the people of Yemen and Sudan. Show me how many things you've written about Yemen and Sudan versus what I've written about Yemen and Sudan.
Okay.
Well, see, the Zionists, they really have nothing to defend. I mean, this, as I said, stupid morons, they come on this kind of Piers Morgan show just to show their face and just to make a statement that we are still here to defend the state of Israel, right? That's all they are here for. In the process, they forget that the whole world have watched how brutal, how merciless, how heartless these people are. Subscribe to my channel for more videos in the next one.